Richard Martinez's son was one of the victims in the Santa Barbara shooting, and he talked about his son Christopher during a CNN interview. And it's a really, really difficult video to watch because not only is he advocating for gun control, you can see the emotion just pouring out of him, and you can see how frustrated and angry he is with Congress and their inaction, according to him. Let's take a look.
So the reason I'm doing this right now is to try to see if we can do anything to make my son's death mean something, because that's all we've got. If there's all these things in the media about the shooter and there's nothing about the victims, then it sends the wrong message. And that people need to understand that real people died here, and they need to know, put faces and names and histories to the people who died, to make it real for them.
I think he makes a really great point about that, because oftentimes when the mainstream press covers these shootings, they focus solely on the shooter. They identify him. And I think a lot of other people who see that, a lot of people who also carry out shootings later, kind of get turned on by the fame that comes along with it. And so that's the reason why we're not talking about or identifying the shooter, although obviously a lot of you already know who he is. But he makes a great point there. I mean, these are innocent people that were fatally shot or stabbed because this guy could not get a woman to sleep with him. I mean, the sense of entitlement he had was absolutely sick. And, you know, later on, we're going to talk about the number of people who were actually defending him and the number of people who actually felt sorry for him. But before we get to that, let's go to the second video.
The politicians after Sandy Hook swore that they would do something.
We're all proud to be Americans. But what kind of a message does it send to the world when we have such a rudderless bunch of idiots in government? I can't tell you how angry I am. It's just awful. And no parent should have to go through this. No parent. To have a kid die because in this kind of a situation, what has changed? Have we learned nothing? These things are going to continue until somebody does something. So where the hell is the leadership? Where the hell is these people we elect to Congress that we spend so much money on? These people are getting rich sitting in Congress. And what do? They don't take care of our kids. My kid died because nobody responded to what occurred at Sandy Hook. Those parents lost little kids. It's bad enough that I lost my 20-year-old, but I had 20 years with my son. That's all I ever have. But those people lost their children at 6 and 7 years old. How do you think they feel? And who's talking to them now? Who's doing anything for them now? Who is standing up for those kids that died back then in an elementary school? Why wasn't something done? It's outrageous.
It's a really difficult video to watch, and he is referencing Congress voting down strict gun laws, including background checks, federal background checks, a limit to magazine capacity, basically common sense gun reform, I should say, that would prevent mass shootings from happening, that would prevent guns falling in the hands of the wrong people. And you know, in this case, again, he lived in a state, the shooter lived in a state that had the strictest gun laws, and unfortunately, it wasn't enough. He still was able to legally purchase guns, and he was still able to use those guns to kill 3 people. And again, he stabbed his roommates. The 3 people that he stabbed first were his roommates. They had absolutely nothing to do with anything. They were quiet students that never gave him any problem. But this guy was unhinged. I mean, he was diagnosed with something, Asperger's syndrome. He was given drugs or prescribed drugs. He refused to take them. He still got his hands on guns. He still carried out this heinous act. And when you really look into our gun laws, look, guys, the reality is it's heavily influenced by gun manufacturers. It always goes back to money in politics, regardless of what you believe about gun laws, regardless of whether or not you're an advocate for guns. The reality is your opinion doesn't really matter because gun manufacturers have all the power. The NRA, which gets funded by these gun manufacturers, has all the power. To give you an example, ProPublica looked into studies that were done in gun laws, and what they found was this. Since 1996, when a small CDC-funded study on the risks of owning a firearm firearm ignited opposition from Republicans, the CDC's budget for research on firearm injuries was shrunk to zero. So why would they do that? Why would they defund that type of research? It's because it goes against what they want to do, and that is to profit as much as possible from selling as many guns as possible. So unfortunately, you see that video with the victim's father. He's upset, and of course you see it and you can't help but tear up as you see it. But unfortunately, nothing will be done unless you get the money out of politics, unless you ensure that gun manufacturers stop funding the NRA and the NRA stops funding politicians. We need common sense gun legislation. That's not to say that we need to ban guns. I'm certainly not an advocate for that, but I'm definitely an advocate of making sure that we have the strictest background checks possible so crazy ass people don't get their hands on guns, so they don't legally purchase 3 guns in a 3-month span to carry out shootings that kill 6 innocent people.